Whatever was left of Joe Biden's lamentable, pathetic political legacy just got flushed down the toilet that much deeper. The Autopen scandal just blew up. And we're going to give all the details, including a statement from President Trump just moments ago. You'll hear it next. Also, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is very concerned that inmates at Alligator Alcatraz are brushing their teeth where they poop. That's right. She's never seen a bathroom that has a commode and a sink in the same vicinity. The rest of us, Debbie, we all brush our teeth where we poop. I mean, within the same proximity, generally speaking. We'll show you more lunacy from the left about ICE and the enforcement of the law, and Tom Homan slamming back on all their lies. And finally, speaking of Democrat lunacy, how about one member of Congress who actually appears to have aided and abetted the assault of an ICE agent during that raid at the pot farm in California? We're going to give you those details and a whole lot more. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. This Trump administration is busy as all hell. They got their sleeves rolled up, streamlining monumental moves right now. They're chugging away on all cylinders. It's difficult for them to take your personal finances into account when trying to do what's right for the country. That's your job. You're supposed to do that. It's why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold right now from Birch Gold. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. Some central banks bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension among the highest in decades. But you may be able to find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can just buy some to store at home, just in case. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Birch Gold's going to send you a free info kit on gold. No obligation, only useful information. They've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They got tens of thousands of happy customers. It's time for you to take control of your savings today. Text the word Larry to 989898. Do it today. So Joe Biden, he used an Autopen to sign pardons, executive orders, clemency, just across the board. And the New York Times had a huge expose revealing the details about who ran that Autopen. Then the fact that the New York Times has this story and people are talking to them, well, that's part of the story. It means they're trying to cover their asses. It means this is typical Washington, D.C. preemptive damage control because something much bigger is coming down the line. The gig is up on Joe Biden's unconstitutional use of the Autopen without any paper trail of authorization directly to the president for pardons. And we're going to show you why all of this is a big deal. First, though, you remember this, right? Take a look at these pardons, the pardons for Anthony Fauci, for the Biden family, for the January 6th committee, for General Milley. All the pardons, identical, exactly the same. In fact, there's only one outlier, one pardon that Joe Biden issued in the final weeks of his presidency that was not executed by the Autopen as these were. We'll remind you who that pardon was for coming up in just a bit. But first, the New York Times had this huge expose, including a 10-minute conversation with Biden himself. We're going to pull out parts of the transcript there so that you can see exactly how bad his brain is and how incoherent his answers were. This story is exploding, and Donald Trump, President of the United States, speaking from the Oval Office, just threw a little more gasoline on that explosion. Here's what he had to say mere moments ago.
And said that he signed off on every decision. But at the same time, the Times reports that he did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. What are your take on that? Any new revelations from that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the Autopen. Look, the Autopen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal. And I know the people on the other side of the, see that desk, that Resolute desk? Unfortunately, he used it before me. But, we have our choice of 7 desks. They're all beautiful, but I chose the Resolute, and so did he. unfortunately. But the people on the other side of the Resolute desk, I know them. Lisa, the whole group, and they're no good. They're sick people. And I guarantee you, he knew nothing about what he was signing. I guarantee it. So they're going to figure it out, and we'll see what happens. But to me, the Autopen, you elected president. You know what the Autopen is supposed to do? Sign thousands of letters from young people that write. We get thousands of letters a week, Susie, right? Thousands. I mean, tens of thousands sometimes. I look at a room, there's a room where we have many, many people working, responding and sending letters back. That's what an Autopen's supposed to be. To write to a young 7-year-old boy that writes to the president and he wants to be president someday and he loves America. That's what the Autopen's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be for signing major legislation and all the things. No, the Autopen, and I doubt he knew. I doubt they even spoke to him about it. I think they had, it's called a freewheeling Autopen. Like Biden was never for open borders. Biden was never for transgender for everyone. So I don't think I think the radical left people that took over the White House. And if I didn't win, our country was finished.
All right. So that's what President Biden had to say just now. And President Trump said just now. And he's clearly looking for further investigations, further information about this. James Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, also put out a statement after the New York Times article saying this is why we're having hearings. This is why we're getting to the bottom of it. This might even be a criminal investigation if people utilize that Autopen without direct authorization from the president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden. And then one must ask, how could he have given direct authorization for the use of the Autopen for executing things like pardons if he wasn't completely mentally competent, as we've already discussed for the last several weeks, ever since Jake Tapper's bogus book came out, that everyone acknowledges now that he had diminished capabilities. So explain to me how somebody with diminished capabilities, number one, who we've already acknowledged couldn't run for re-election, that's why he was forced to pull himself out of the campaign, couldn't really execute the jobs and duties of the president of the United States, but suddenly in the final weeks of his campaign, in the final hours of his presidency, he's capable of directing individuals to use the Autopen for blanket pardons and clemencies across the board. That he was fully aware of, that his mashed potato brains didn't get in the way of. Give me a break. Give everybody a break. We know better. So the hearings and the investigations will continue. But what's in this New York Times article? Well, there's a lot of smoking guns there with regard to who really did take advantage of this situation and how out of the loop President Biden was. First, though, as Julie Kelly breaks down here in this thread, the New York Times, to their credit, put out the entire transcript of their 10-minute conversation with President Biden. Now, the only reason they've done that is because Donald Trump has already called the media on their bull. The fact that they tried to edit out half of Kamala Harris's interview on 60 Minutes, and they were forced and compelled to release the whole thing. The New York Times now is recognizing that if they only showed, 1 or 2 minutes in their article of their 10-minute conversation with Joe Biden, everyone would accuse them of trying to paint him in his best light and keeping all the incoherence out of the article, which they did, by the way. It's not in the article, but it is in this transcript, and it's noteworthy. Here, take a look. I told them I wanted to make sure he had a pardon because I knew exactly what Trump would do. This, by the way, regard to, I don't know who he's talking about here, actually. Sorry about that. We'll get to it. I'll figure it out. I knew what Trump would do without any merit, I might add. And, I think that's Hunter they're talking about there. And, members of the January 6th committee, it's just there were no... I was deeply involved. So every time his brain starts to fry out, which we're so used to with Joe Biden in our life, lamentably for the last 4 to 50 years, his brain frizzles. He can't finish his thought. He has no idea what he was saying. He has no idea how to complete the sentence because he's got a stutter, don't you know? And then what does he do? He goes back to the memorized talking point that the people told him before he engaged in this conversation he had to convey. Mr. President, Joe Biden, whatever you do, at the end of the day, you've got to let the New York Times know that you made every decision on the pardons. On the what? Pardons? What? Did I burp just now? I'm sorry. Pardon me. No, not that kind of pardon, Mr. Biden. By the way, what's that voice? Did I just become Bernie Sanders pretending to be Joe Biden? Just make sure you let them know you made every decision, that you were deeply involved in all the pardons. Wait, are you telling me I was president? Yes, Mr. Biden, you were president and you were okay, so here he goes. He reaches a roadblock in his brain as he's trying to finish a sentence. You know, members of the January 6th committee, it's just there were no, I was deeply involved. That's right. That's what I'm supposed to say. I was deeply involved. I laid out a strategy how I wanted to go about these dealing with pardons and commutations. And I pulled the team in to say, this is how I want to get it done generically and then specifically. And so, you know, it's just, this is how it worked. You know, the thing. That's Joe Biden, the man that the Democrats and Joe Biden himself still contend was perfectly capable of being president right now and for the next 3.5 years. Good Lord. A little bit more. How about this one? On Trump and other Republicans saying Biden was incapacitated and his aides abused the Autopen. Here's his answer to that. They're liars. They know it. They know for certain. I mean, this is, look, what they've had a pretty good thing going here. They've done so badly. They've lied so consistently about almost everything they're doing. The best thing they can do is try to change the focus and focus on something else. And this is I think that's what this is about. Let me get this straight. He thinks that Trump and the Republicans are scrambling right now because things are going so poorly, you know, with the lower unemployment. And the month of June, for the first time in a decade, showed a surplus in the U.S. Treasury. This at a time when inflation is down and the stock market is soaring. Plus, the border is secured, something that this guy lied about and said that was impossible to happen. Plus, we've got deportations going on. Crime is down. The economy's chugging along, and we finally have some peace in the Middle East. It looks like, if it holds, God willing. So Joe Biden thinks, yeah, things are going so bad for them. They just passed the biggest tax cut in American history. Yeah, they got to lie about me, and they got to point it. They got to distract the American people and tell them about the Autopen and the pardons and about me because they got to change the subject. No, I'm pretty sure they'd love to talk about all the things that I just laid out. That's fine. He says it's, you know, it's consistent with Trump's game plan all along. I mean, if I don't expect you to answer my question, but if I told you 3 years ago we'd have a president doing this, I think you'd look at me in the eye and say, what are you, crazy? Wait, what's he talking about? That's just incoherent gobbledygook. But it's Joe Biden. He has mashed potatoes for brains. More from the transcript on granting preemptive pardons to his family. In terms of my fam, he go after me through my family. I know how vindictive he is. I mean, everybody knows how vindictive he is. This is a man who sicked his Justice Department on Donald Trump, where they levied bogus charges, where he had a special prosecutor look at him and it got thrown out by the Supreme Court. You talk about vindictive. Look at Joe Biden's entire career. Ask Clarence Thomas and his family whether he thinks Joe Biden is vindictive. Ask Robert Bork's family, may he rest in peace, about how vindictive Joe Biden, what a mean SOB Joe Biden is. And now he's calling I wish Donald Trump were a little more vindictive. Donald Trump is the guy who, after he won the election in 2016, said of Hillary Clinton and her use of an unsecured, unauthorized private email server for state secrets as Secretary of State, Donald Trump said, yeah, no, we're not going to investigate her. She's been through enough. Let's just move on. Let the country heal. I wish Donald Trump were more vindictive. Sorry. Let's go back. Everybody knows how vindictive he is. So we knew that they do what they're going to do. And then he laughs. Joe Biden laughs. And my family didn't do anything wrong. My sister, my brother-in-law, my brother. And all it would do is if he went after them is run up legal bills. I just know how he operates. And so I consciously made all those decisions, among others. So he consciously made all the decisions for the pardons. By the way, if your daughter and your brother-in-law and your sister and your brother, if they did nothing wrong, there's great news for you. We have a Justice Department and a judicial system and a court system that actually allows them to defend themselves should false charges be brought up against them. Or are you saying, Joe Biden, that our judicial system is politically corrupt and can be used as a political weapon to punish people. Gee, where have we seen that before? Oh, you're going to use the system just to run up people's legal fees, even though you know they didn't do anything wrong? Uh-huh. Yeah. How about all of the people who worked for the Trump administration who had to spend half their life savings, if not more, to defend themselves to the January 6th committee, even though they were never even named in the final report from the January 6th committee? I could name 20 people that I know who had to deal exactly with that situation. Why does Joe Biden suggest that Donald Trump might make people in the Biden family's lives a living hell and make them spend a ton of money on legal fees, even if they didn't do anything wrong? Because that's what Joe Biden does and has done. We just lived through it. That said, the details that did make it into the article are insane. Here's some from our write-up over at Town Hall. In an interview with the New York Times, Mr. Biden said that he had orally granted all the pardons and communications issued at the end of his term, calling President Trump and other Republicans liars for claiming his aides had used an Autopen to do so without his authorization. Let me just say something. This is 2024 at the time we're talking here with Joe Biden. It was 2024. We have every possible type of communications device at our disposal that you can ever imagine. For God's sake, we're living partly in the world of the Jetsons, where you can be sitting in your family room watching a football game and hit a device and have a video call with 20 of your closest friends all watching the same football game with you. We can communicate via telephone. We can record everything. This is being recorded right now, our conversation that you and I are having. We have word processors. We have email. We have text messages. We have tweets, for God's sake. We have typewriters if we really want to use them. We've got every kind of communications device that will record the wishes of a president of the United States at any given time. And yet somehow, the critically important constitutional power that a president has under Joe Biden to issue pardons and clemency, somehow those directives were given orally without any kind of recording taking place. None of this was memorialized for posterity or for legal purposes. You know, I've interviewed the president of the United States several times. Do you know what they do when you interview the president of the United States? If it's a recorded radio interview or television streaming interview, or even if it's just a written interview and you're only recording it for your own purposes. Do you know what they do at the White House? When a member of the media comes and interviews the president, they record it themselves. It's for the presidential archives. Every single, you ask anybody in the media if they've ever interviewed the president of the United States, they make their own independent recording of that interview. And yet somehow in the Biden White House, when he is giving the directives to pardon, the most controversial things he did in the final days of his presidency with these pardons, and there's no actual, we have to take their word for it. We have to take mashed potato for brains word for it after the fact, as he's trying to cover his ass and the asses of everyone in his staff. Somehow this is the one thing. He couldn't fire off a memo. They couldn't put a letter in front of him saying, Mr. Biden, do you approve these pardons and clemency? And then he just scratches his name on it. They couldn't do that. Nothing in writing, all delivered orally. That's what we're supposed to believe. I made every decision, Mr. Biden said in a phone interview. Oh, by the way, it was a phone interview. So the people from the New York Times didn't see if he was being handed notes, if he was reading a script, if he was reading something. They have no idea who was in the room with him, who was telling him what to tell the New York Times. Nobody knows. Asserting that he had a staff use an Autopen replicating his signature on the clemency warrants because we're talking about a whole lot of people. It wasn't just the clemency warrants. Let me remind you, it was not just the clemency warrants. We're talking all of the pardons, save one. Every single major pardon, not just the batches of clemency. They're distracting you. Every single pardon, as you see right here, except for one. Which one? We'll tell you in a minute. All right, back to our write-up here of the New York Times article. In the interview, Mr. Biden explained that he decided against commuting the sentences of 3 death row inmates convicted of such crimes to life sentences, too. Even though some thought I should have, their offenses affected American society as a whole. Mr. Biden said so commuting their sentences would have been a bridge too far. The 4th set was announced on Mr. Biden's last day. See how they're talking about all these clemencies, all these batched things that he did for, drug dealers. No, we want to talk about the high profile. We want to talk about Fauci. We want to talk about your family. The 4th set was announced on Mr. Biden's last day. They included preemptive pardons for members of his own family and various people who have drawn Mr. Trump's ire. That I love the New York Times puts the entire thing in the perspective of, because Trump. Because Trump. This is really all about Trump. Bull. The emails reflect White House activities surrounding each of those tranches, including the dates of the meetings at which White House officials indicate Mr. Biden made decisions and the names of the senior aides in attendance. Very careful language from the New York Times there, in which White House officials indicate Mr. Biden made decisions. They're not saying Mr. Biden made decisions. They're saying that White House officials indicated that Mr. Biden made decisions. That's because there is no evidence that Mr. Biden did, in fact, make those decisions. There's only evidence that his aides claim he made those decisions. They also showed that the use of the Autopen was managed by Mr. Biden's White House staff secretary, Ms. Feldman. She wanted to receive written accounts confirming Mr. Biden's oral instructions in the meetings before having it used to produce the warrants recording the clemency actions, according to the emails. In other words, this woman, Ms. Feldman, she says, I want written information confirming that Biden is authorizing this. Now, in any normal universe, I don't know what company, whatever business you work for right now, if something as critical as a pardon is being delivered, whatever critical part of your business, whether it's purchasing or whether it's payroll or whether it's, some check that the boss says, go ahead and write this check, I bet you need a paper trail. For auditing purposes, for legal purposes. Like, who made this decision? Well, you did, boss. I didn't tell you to do that. Well, Jim told me that you said to do that. No, I never told Jim to do that. Jim, what the hell are you talking about? I didn't say to do that. That's why in like the smallest family-owned business, a drugstore, a gas station, freaking pencil factory, where the stakes, forgive me, are not quite as high as a pardon at the White House, you have basic paper trails. Not here. Not here. Not with this. Gee, I wonder why. The aides referred to those written accounts of meetings at which Mr. Biden delivered oral decisions as blurbs. Isn't that cute? The accounts were drafted by aides to the senior advisors who had participated in the key meetings. So the advisors go to the meeting with the president. And allegedly, the president says, yeah, give those people pardons. And then the aides, who are the advisors who are hearing that allegedly from Biden, do they then go and write it up and put their name on it? No, they don't even do that. They turn to their staff and they said, Biden said to give pardons to these people, write it up. So they're twice removed now from this alleged oral decision command to give these pardons. This thing as corrupt as hell. The assistants who drafted the blurbs were not themselves in the room with Mr. Biden, according to the lists of meeting participants. The emails imply that Mr. Siskel and Mr. Zients relayed that Biden had said to the assistants, who then documented it. The assistants circulated the drafts to Mr. Siskel, Mr. Zients, and other meeting participants before sending the final versions to Ms. Feldman, again copying the meeting participants. For the earlier sets of large-scale clemency actions, the process sometimes took place several days after the meeting with Mr. Biden. For two crucial meetings at the end of this term, it took place on the same days. All right, finally, January 19th meeting. January 19th is literally the day before Donald Trump became president of the United States. He was sworn in at noon on January 20th. This is the day before Biden is leaving. He's already packed up. It's his last night that he's staying in the White House. Everything's already, boxed up. It's over, baby. It is over, right? He's donezo. Which took place in the yellow oval room of the White House residence. Mr. Biden kept his aides until nearly 10 p.m. Who believes that? This is a guy who would call a lid at 2 p.m. every day at the latest. This is a guy who, remember how he was at the debate that started at 9 p.m. on CNN? You remember? Dude, who believes that he kept his aides up on the final day of their presidency up past 10 p.m. in the White House residence to talk about this crap? Really? Nobody. The answer is nobody believes that, except the New York Times, apparently. The emails show that an aide to Mr. Siskel sent a draft summary of Mr. Biden's decisions at that meeting to an assistant to Mr. Zients, copying Mr. Siskel at 10:03 p.m. The assistant forwarded it to Mr. Reed and Mr. Zients, asking for their approval, and then sent a final version to Ms. Feldman, copying many meeting participants and aides at 10:28 p.m. 3 minutes later, Mr. Zients hit reply all and wrote, "I approve the use of the Autopen for the execution of all of the following pardons." Funny thing about that. I approve the use of the Autopen for the execution of all of the following pardons. This is Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States. It delineates the powers of the executive. In Section 2, Clause 1, it says of the president, "He shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States." The president shall have the power to grant those pardons. The president, not Mr. Zients, the chief of staff. Chief of staff writes a memo, "I approve the use of the Autopen for the execution of these pardons." It's not up to him to approve that. It's up to Joe Biden to approve that. Where's the paper trail? Where's the audit trail? Where's the accountability? Chris Van Hollen, who, when last we checked in on him, was having margaritas with an MS-13 gang member that he still likes to refer to as a Maryland man, was asked about these pardons this morning on CNN.
John, I was just reading those reports this morning as well. My understanding is that, President Biden did look at these pardons. John,
well, there you go. I feel better now. Chris Van Hollen's understanding is that Biden looked at the pardons. Let's go back to that Constitution again. What was the power here? He shall have the power to look at reprieves and pardons for offenses. Oh, no. He's actually supposed to grant the pardons, not look at them. I feel better. The Autopen was used on some of the most controversial and high-profile pardons in the final days of the Biden presidency, including those pardons on the final night at 10:31 p.m. when we're told Joe Biden had an all-nighter and decided on granting his family members and other people those pardons. This is what those signatures look like on January 19th. They all used the Autopen, every single one of them, except for this one. You see how different that looks? Shaky Joe kind of messed up his last name there. The B is hard to do when you've got mashed potatoes for brains. That signature, the one signature that didn't require the Autopen because Joe wanted to do it himself. It's for Hunter. It's for his son, Hunter Biden. But those other ones that the Autopen got executed for, well, you can count this guy as one of the people where there's no paper trail, no accountability, no responsibility. Also, every single member of the January 6th committee, every single one of them, the people who now stand accused of authorizing the destruction of evidence for that committee itself. Every single one of them got a pardon, as did General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, why would General Milley need a pardon anyway, right? I mean, what did he do that could potentially put him in legal trouble of any sort? Well, I want to remind you exactly what General Milley did. And to help me out, I've got General Milley himself saying it because he was proud at the time of his behavior. Here's what he did.
Chinese thought wrongly that the United States was going to attack them. I am certain, guaranteed certain, that President Trump had no intent to attack. And it was my task to make sure I communicated that. And the purpose was to de-escalate, calm things down.
You shared all that earlier, I understand.
And as part of that,
just say, did you or did you not tell him that if we were going to attack, you would let him know?
as part of that conversation, I said, General Lee, there's not going to be a war. There's not going to be attack between great powers. And if there was, the tensions would build up. There'd be calls going back and forth from all kinds of senior officials. I said, hell, General Lee, I'll probably give you a call, but we're not going to attack you. Trust me, we're not going to attack you. These are two great powers, and I am doing my best to transmit the president's intent, President Trump's intent, to ensure that the American people are protected from an incident that could escalate.
I understand your intent, but I think you articulating that you would tell him, you would give him a call, I think is worthy of your resignation. I just think that's against our country, that you would give our #1 adversary that information and tell him that.
Chinese.
Yeah, that's understating it, to say the least. That's General Milley bragging about the fact that he would call his military counterpart in the Red Chinese Army to give him a heads up if things were moving toward some sort of military action against that nation. By the way, do you notice in the background there how everybody in the hearing room is wearing masks? Yeah, it's because this was in 2021 when everybody was dancing on the grave of Donald Trump's political career. They thought it was over, so Milley could go ahead and say this because he'll never be president. He's finished. He's over. Look at him. He led an insurrection. There's no way the American people would vote for him. But there's another thing other than giving us the timeline on this 2021. The masks. Why were we wearing masks again? Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, a virus that was unleashed on our nation and on the world out of the Wuhan lab in China. Here's General Milley sitting there while we're all suffering and people are dying and people's lives are ruined because the Communist Party of China decided to unleash a bioweapon on the planet. And this guy's bragging about how proud he is that he would have circumvented the commander-in-chief to give a heads up to our enemy to let them know any military strike might be pending. And that guy got a pardon from Joe Biden. This is not over, folks. The investigations will escalate and will continue, and we'll be right here to give you all the details as it does. By the way, it's been a while since I've told you about my book, so I would love for you to catch my book. It's my newest one. It's called Doge Squad, The Corruption Protocol. It's a novella. It's fiction. It's a spy thriller, and it's great. It's about a maverick president bringing in a multi-billionaire to clean up the government, and they uncover corruption like you've never seen before. And it's a pretty good read. It's getting lots of good reviews, and I would love for you to buy a copy of it. In fact, it's a great summer read for the beach. You can get it in hardcover or paperback or the audiobook. And moms, dads, if you like this book, I'd love it if you just gave it to your teenage kids when you were done reading it. Because when I was a kid, I grew up on the Hardy Boys, and because of that, I love thrillers. I read them all the time. I read Brad Thor, Kurt Schlichter, Jack Carr, Tom Clancy, Vince Flynn, but it's because when I was young, I had a love for these kind of books. That's my hope here. You'll love it, and your kids will love it. Check it out, Doge Squad, Corruption Protocol, on Amazon in all formats. Tom Homan has had enough with the lies. He's had enough with the hysterics. He's had enough with the drama. He was all over media this weekend calling out the Democrats on their lies, specifically the ones that are endangering ICE agents right now and creating a spectacle about law enforcement just doing their job, enforcing our law, and yes, rounding up criminals who were in this country illegally. We'll start. You'll see Tom Homan in a sec, but we'll start with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's a congresswoman from Florida, and she inspected the Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center for illegal immigrant criminals who are facing deportation. And what she saw there was outrageous. Apparently, there's like swamp waters down there. It's really humid. There are mosquitoes. It's Florida. She represents Florida. I mean, I just described Florida. That's the whole point of being in Florida. Anyway, she had more to say as well.
What we saw, the conditions that we saw inside this internment camp, which it is nothing less than that description, were really appalling. I'll walk you through just a few of the really egregious, disturbing disgusting conditions. They are using cages. These detainees are living in cages. The pictures that you've seen don't do it justice. They are essentially packed into cages, wall-to-wall humans, 32 detainees per cage. That is the only thing inside those cages are their bunk beds, and there are 3 tiny toilets that are toilet units that have a sink attached to it. What we saw,
Okay, a couple of things here. Let's break this down, shall we? Because I think every aspect of this little 1 minute you saw from Debbie Wasserman Schultz deserves some attention. Also, I love it when they wear their little windbreakers that say House of Representatives. They are so self-important, aren't they? All right, check this out.
conditions that we saw inside this internment camp, which it is nothing less than that description.
All right, let's just be clear here. They're using all these euphemisms: concentration camp, internment camp, detention center, cage, jail. But frankly, they're all sort of the same thing. Although historically, when you call something a concentration camp, you're preying on the kind of language that is reserved for gulags and for the Holocaust. So when they use those terms, they're doing it on purpose. She decided to use the term internment camp instead. So the internment camps in the United States history were used for U.S. citizens of Japanese descent during World War II. It was Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt who decided that citizens of the United States, even Japanese citizens, American citizens of Japanese descent who had been born here in this country, who were second generation, third generation, but because of their nationality, they should be rounded up, all of their property confiscated. They lost their jobs. They lost their livelihoods. They had to sell everything they owned, and they got shipped from like Southern California and from the San Francisco Bay Area to places in Arkansas and Montana to live in hastily constructed internment camps because we were at war with the Japanese. Now, I don't want to relitigate all of that, other than the use of the term internment camp is incredibly offensive in this regard. If you, like me, believe that the internment of U.S. citizens of Japanese descent was a blight on American history, you can rationalize a lot of things when you're at war, a lot of bad things, a lot of evil things. And I do believe that the internment of U.S. citizens of Japanese descent was, in fact, bad, wrong, and evil. To liken what is happening in Florida right now in the facility she just toured to the internment of U.S. citizens of Japanese descent is offensive, and she should be called out on it. I feel like I'm the only one doing so. But there is a big difference between what the U.S. government did to their own citizens because of their ethnicity and race versus what is happening at the facility in Florida, where these are illegal immigrants coming from another country, not U.S. citizens, with no constitutional protections, who have committed crimes and are now waiting deportation from this country. To use the same term is so incredibly offensive, but she's a Democrat, so she will get away with it.
Were really appalling. I'll walk you through just a few of the really egregious, disturbing, disgusting conditions. They are using cages. These detainees are living in cages.
They are not living in cages. The portions of the building down there are separated with chain link fences. Okay, it's fencing. It's to keep people within certain areas so that it's not just one giant room. And let's not forget, they are being detained for criminal activity. Okay, but it's a chain. It's not a cage. It is a chain link fence. It's like saying in your backyard, if your kids are playing in your backyard and you've got a chain link fence on your backyard, you know, to define the territory of your property lines and to make sure that nobody can come in and steal your kids and kidnap them. And by the way, so your kids can't just run all over the neighborhood. Are you keeping your kids in a cage in the backyard? No, you are not keeping your kid in a cage in the backyard, even if your kid deserves it. You're not. So that's a little hyperbolic from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but it gets better.
The pictures that you've seen don't do it justice. They are essentially packed into cages, wall-to-wall humans, 32 detainees per cage.
So 32 detainees per fenced-in quadrant, which, okay, fine stat, but it's meaningless if you don't tell us the proportion of that quadrant. For instance, if it's 100 square yards, that's pretty huge. You got a lot of room to roam about. Now, I doubt it's that big, but what is it? Is it 100 square feet, perhaps? Or maybe 500 square feet? That's kind of critically important. When you tell me how many people are in there, fine. How big is the space that they're in? But she leaves that out. All she wants to do is tell you that there are 32 in there.
That is the only thing inside those cages are their bunk beds, and there are 3 tiny toilets that are toilet units.
By the way, what does that mean, tiny toilets? Are they supposed to be a certain size? What, to accommodate your fat ass? What do you mean tiny toilets? A toilet's a toilet. It gets the job done. 3 per 32. That means at any given time, 10% of the people in the little caged quadrant can use the John. That's fine. That's typical for like a restaurant or for a theater or what have you. You have to have a certain number of toilets for the capacity of the people in there. That's normal. There's nothing weird about that at all, by the way. Oh, and they've got bunk beds. Do you know what she's describing? She's describing the barracks that the Marines live in when they're enlisted and they first join up in the Marine Corps. That is exactly what she's just described. She's described boot camp at Quantico or Camp Lejeune or wherever it is. Where do they do boot camp now for the enlisted? Quantico is for the officers. I can't remember where enlisted are. Someone will remind me in the chat. That's what she's describing, and it's outrageous. All right, but then she really wants to dwell on the toilets. By the way, here's the image. That's not a cage. That's a quadrant of the room that has been fenced in with chain link fencing. A cage is a very legitimate, specific thing. Okay, that's not a cage. Number one, and look at there's room. So you're telling me there's 32 people in that space when it's full. All right, so let's let her talk about her little, because she's really upset that the toilets are not the appropriate size.
So they essentially drink. They get their drinking water and they brush their teeth, where they poop in the same unit. They bragged that they went above standards, supposedly, and gave them a 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length inside the 32 detainee cage. A 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length of the 3 toilets. So
right. By the way, I mean, I hate to sound racist, and I'll be called that anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and just say what's on my mind, because you can't stop people from calling you a racist. But I just want to say the vast majority of the illegal immigrants who have come here and lied about their asylum status and have broken laws in their home countries and are wreaking havoc in this nation, and now they're getting deported. And yes, other people are getting swept up with them who are in the country illegally, and they're being deported too. They're all coming from El Salvador and from Honduras and from Guatemala and from Mexico and from Venezuela and Haiti and other countries. Can I just tell you something? Forgive me. I would venture to say that for most of these people, the facilities they have when they go home are not nearly as nice as this. I've said it. I'm sorry. I've been to El Salvador. I've been to Guatemala. Not been to Haiti. I'm not that stupid. I've been to third world nations. I've seen the squalor that people live in. I assure you the floors are not that clean. I assure you that where they go to do their business, to do their number 1 and number 2, they do not have a 3-foot privacy wall. I've seen it with my own very eyes. Hell, I've seen it in Los Angeles on any given day, walking down the street. So yeah, it's a horrible thing what these people are enduring compared to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's standards. But compared to Guatemala, you could do worse. But what did she say at the beginning there about the toilet facilities? What's going on here?
So they essentially drink, they get their drinking water and they brush their teeth where they poop.
It's called a bathroom, ma'am. What is Debbie Wasserman Schultz's house like? I'd love to get the tour of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's house. Here is our drinking water room. And then right next door, this is our toothbrushing room. We have a room exclusive just for brushing our teeth. And then over here, separated from the brushing your teeth room, this is the pooping room. We have 3 different rooms. You want to drink a water, you go into that room, close the door, get your privacy, keep it sanitary. You want to brush your teeth, ditto. And then, of course, if you want to do your number 1 or number 2, the pooping room is right here. Separate rooms for everything. The rest of us, I don't know about you, I don't know what kind of life you've got, but for the most of us, for the rest of us, I know in my house, you can take care of business sitting right here. Stand up, please flush, drop the lid, walk 1.5 feet that way, turn on the sink, you're brushing your teeth. Here in America, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz with a hyphen, we all brush our teeth where we poop. I guess there are some master bathrooms. Are we allowed to say master bathrooms still? Can we say that? En suite? That's right. There are some master bathrooms where the commode does have a door. That's separate. And maybe that's all Wasserman Schultz is used to. I cannot believe that we are crying tears for the criminal illegal aliens who were facing mass deportation, but they had every opportunity to do self-deportation and get money from the federal government on their way home where they belong. We're shedding tears because they have to brush their teeth where they poop. Well, not only have I had it, but Tom Homan has had it, and he had a hell of a weekend pushing back on all of this crap. Here he was in Tampa at the Turning Point USA conference with our buddy Charlie Kirk. Take a listen.
We left thousands of empty ice beds at $127 a night, empty. Thousands of them. They released them to NGOs at $500 a night. Why did they do that? Because they knew if they're in ice detention, they get a hearing within 40 days. 90% lose their case, they get sent home. That is not what they wanted. They're playing the long game. Let's release them in the community. Wait 3 or 5 years. Pardon me?
Are you an MS-13 member? It says so.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. I got a question. No. I got a question for you. Why don't you come up here and hand me that picture? Bring it. USA. All right. They got morons like this all over the country. This guy wouldn't respect the surface nation. This guy ain't got the balls to be an ICE officer. He hasn't got the balls to be a Border Patrol agent. This guy lives in his mother's basement. The only thing that surprised me, you don't have purple hair and a nose ring. Get out of here, you loser. And you're such a badass, meet me off stage in 13 minutes and 50 seconds. I guarantee you, he sits down to pee. Guaranteed.
That's one way to take care of a heckler. He sits down to pee, but does he brush his teeth right there as well? That's the question. There's something cathartic about that, by the way. I actually saw people criticizing Homan for threatening to beat this guy, kick this guy's ass, saying, meet me. I love the 13 minutes and 50 seconds. Just so you know, the reason why he was so specific is because when you give a speech at these conferences, there's actually a giant clock down at the bottom of the stage telling you how much time you've got left because they got to keep the thing going. So he knew that he had 13 minutes and 50 seconds left. I love that little part of it too. Tom Homan's the best. When he wasn't threatening to kick the ass of a, I'm not going to believe it, when he kicked the ass of a dirtbag protester, he was granting interviews. This one, Dasha Burns, Politico. She's really concerned about law enforcement officers wearing masks. That's the thing. That's the whole thing they've got now. And I love it too. I love it when a Democrat or a member of the media says, listen, it's one thing to go after. Nobody's against you going after criminal, illegal aliens, but why do you have to wear a mask? It's like, excuse me. Of course you were against this. Your entire party was against this. Everyone in the media was against this. And when Trump ran on this and said this is what we were going to do, you also said it couldn't be done. What are they going to do? Go neighborhood by neighborhood and just round people up? And that's what they're doing. The problem is a lot of the people they're rounding up are gang members, violent, vicious, murderous gang members. And everybody's got a television camera live streaming on their phone. So when the raids come, if they broadcast the identity of one of these people, their lives and their families' lives are in danger. And that's why they're protecting themselves. But Dasha Burns is very upset and very concerned about the masks.
I think one of the things that's had a lot of folks up in arms is that ICE agents, unlike other law enforcement, have been masked to protect their identities. That's not something that we've really had on this scale in this country. Do you?
Well, we never had the scale of attacks on ICE. We have now up 700% attacks on ICE. Doxing against ICE agents.
Well, you've had increased attacks on police officers as well in the wake of the defund the police movement too, but they haven't put masks on.
By the way, I'm sorry, I have to jump in. I love that argument. Hey, there was an increase on violence against cops back during the Summer of Love, the George Floyd Black Lives Matter riots. Don't you remember that? Hey, we were kicking cops' butts all the time there. We were. That's really their argument? You know, we got to wear masks because there's an increased threat of violence against these cops. Hey, come on. We were beating the hell out of cops back in 2020. You didn't put masks on, so why now? Thank you for validating our concerns. When that's your defense, you know you've got a problem. That said, the violence against cops back then, as disgusting and un-American as it was, is nothing compared to what these ICE agents are seeing as Tom Homan. Look at that face. Look at him. Go, Tom. As Tom Homan is about to explain.
You name a police agency that has a 700% increase on assaults. Name one.
I haven't looked at that data. Yeah.
You won't find one. The attacks on ICE is unprecedented, 700% increase. And we're not even talking about the doxing of agents, their spouses, and their children. So they're wearing masks to help give them some sort of protection. But when the same people that are complaining about ICE wearing masks, have they ever said anything about BLM protesters wearing masks?
Well, I mean, that leads me to the question that, like, do you have concerns that
let me answer, though. Let me answer.
Yeah, okay.
Have they ever say anything about the mass protesters that became criminals on college campuses that threatened Jewish students and took over buildings, destroyed property? They were all wearing masks. Did anybody pass legislation saying they can't wear a mask during a protest? No. We're talking about law enforcement.
Oh, I think there are a lot of people who are upset about that. But then,
have you seen any legislation proposed to remove masks from protesters that become criminals, that take over college campuses? You haven't. Look at the BLM protesters, how many lives were lost, how much property was stolen. They're all wearing masks. Did anybody propose legislation saying it's illegal to wear a mask in public while you're protesting? No, there isn't. This is attacking ICE officers. The Democrats want to vilify men and women at ICE and boards. And I said from day one, when President Trump won office and I came back and said, now the vilification starts. Right now, it's the racist ICE, the racist border patrol for simply enforcing the law to deal with the repercussions of Biden administration's open borders, where millions of criminals and public safety threats were released in this country. So I support ICE wearing masks. They're still wearing insignia. They got HSI, ERO, or FBI, DEA, but there needs to be some level of protection because the tax is unprecedented. 700%, for God's sake. And what I want to remind people is, I was an ICE agent. These men and women at ICE, they're mothers and fathers too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day and they come to work. They're not the beast. They're enforcing a law. They're trying to make this country safe again, and they're being vilified for it and attacked for it. And we're not going to tolerate zero tolerance on this.
I love it. And who doesn't want to like charge through a wall for that guy? Who wouldn't want to work for Tom Homan if you're having to go out there and find these dirtbags on a daily basis? He wasn't done. He went on first Dasha, now Dana. This one, Dana Bash on CNN. And the questions were typical, which we'll get to right now. Take a look. Homan was having none of it.
To doing what we're doing.
I just want to ask more broadly and a little bit of a different sort of question here. One thing I have heard over and over anecdotally is that people who are in the United States legally are scared about getting swept up in all of this because of the color of their skin, because they speak with an accent, because of the location where they might be going. And they're not going out. They don't want to be detained by mistake, have their kids or themselves traumatized. Are you comfortable with that?
If they're in the country legally, they got no reason to be afraid. ICE is looking for those in the country legally, and we're still prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats. That's the priority. But like I said, we do have collateral arrests in many areas because we're out looking for those public safety threats. But we're going to enforce immigration law too. I mean, it's not okay to be in this country legally. It's not okay to enter this country legally. It's a crime. But legal aliens and U.S. citizens should not be afraid that they're going to be swept up in the raid. We know who we're looking for, and that's what the agents are out there seeking. And they use a lot of information. Most of the operations we conduct are targeted enforcement operations. When we go out, we know exactly who we're looking for. Most likely we'll find them. Many times we have a criminal history and immigration history when we go out looking for that person. So if you're in a country legally, you shouldn't fear ICE. But what you should fear is the criminal aliens walking the communities in sanctuary cities.
Well, but you do.
Okay, so really important there, the setup, because there's one more part of this clip, as Dana Bash is about to lay out. But the question had to do with people afraid to leave their homes because they might be isolated or targeted because of the way they looked or the accent or something. And Thomas says, listen, if you're in the country legally, you have nothing to worry about. We're not going to deport somebody in the country legally. That's fine. If you got a green card, you're a citizen, you're going to be fine. You shouldn't be afraid of that. You should fear the criminal element that's in your neighborhood. We're trying to take care of that. But then here comes Dana Bash. She wants compassion. She wants compassion for people who are afraid right now that they might get swept up and they might get deported. She wants compassion for illegal immigrants who haven't broken any laws. They're just here for a better life, and they deserve compassion. Now, I just want to point out two questions from Dana Bash about people who are afraid to leave their homes because of ICE agents. And now the second follow-up question, asking if there's any compassion for those people who are living in fear. How many segments have you seen on CNN, on their Sunday shows or any other thing, about the people who are afraid to leave their homes in New York City or Los Angeles because of the criminal element in their neighborhoods? About the people who are afraid to go out jogging alone because of what happened to Lake and Riley? But the people who are afraid in their own small family-owned businesses late at night when they're shutting down and they're taking the receipts from the cash registers home with them because of the criminal element that's been allowed into this country. Where is the compassion for them? Where are the questions about those people who are afraid to interact in the society that they pay taxes for? What about the compassion for the people who are uncomfortable or scared to walk down their own streets because of all of the homeless people who are living there, the criminal vagrants with the drug use and the fornication and the defecation and the urination on public sidewalks who don't like? Does Dana Bash ask about compassion for them, about those people who are afraid because of the results of Gavin Newsom's policies in California or Joe Biden's policies when he was president? You never have those questions. But now suddenly we are all compelled to deliver compassion for those that Dana Bash decides deserves your compassion. And Tom Homan handles this beautifully as well.
Question is, do you have compassion for those people who are seeing what's going on, hearing you speak, seeing what's happening in their neighborhoods, shouldn't have any concern, but do just because of the reality of what they're saying?
Dana, the bottom line is if you want less collateral arrest, and let us in the jail. I mean, we want to arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a county jail, but sanctuary cities release him into the community, which means we got to go to the community and find him. And when we find that bad person, many, many times, whether it's at a work site or in the community, they're with other people in the United States illegally. And we're going to let ICE enforce the law, uphold the oath they took. We're not going to be like the last administration who told ICE, instructed ICE You can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. They got to be convicted of a serious offense. That's not what the law says. We're enforcing the law. But look, immigration enforcement, I'm going to be clear, immigration enforcement has always been emotional. It's always been controversial. I've been doing this since 1984. I get it. And I understand why people want to come to the greatest nation on earth. I get it. But if we can't send a message to the whole world that it's okay to enter this country legally. Don't worry about it. Even though it's a crime, come and enter legally. And when you get an order of removal from a judge, you don't have to leave. You can become a fugitive and we'll never look for you. We got to send a message to the whole world. There are consequences for breaking laws. And I think that's why one of the reasons we have the most secure border in history of this nation today. It's just not because we got boots on the ground on the border, not because we end in catch or release. A lot of it's consequences. You're watching what's happening. We're enforcing the immigration law. And I think that consequence has a lot to do with having the most secure border in history of this nation.
All right. That is a beautiful answer, especially the very beginning part of that answer where he said, listen, I understand people are afraid about collateral arrests. You know what collateral arrests are? When ICE goes because they know that they've got a suspected murderer or pedophile or child trafficker at a place and they've got good intelligence, whether it's at the parking lot of a Home Depot or what have you, they go, they find the guy, they arrest him. But, you know, when law enforcement goes into a room and there's 20 people in the room, they don't say, hey, everybody mind your business, go about your day. We're only looking for this guy. No, no, no. They said, everybody stop what they're doing. Everybody get down on the ground. Everybody put your hands on your heads where we can see him. Everybody. And then they go systematically and they check the ID of everyone. Because if you're hanging out in a house with a suspected murderer, we want to make sure that your nose is clean, because if you're consorting with that guy, you might be a criminal as well. And in screening all of those people in the room with that suspected murderer, illegal immigrant, we find that you're also an illegal immigrant. Guess what? You're going to get deported. Sorry. That's how it goes. That's how law enforcement works. And as Tom Homan just said, if you don't like that, Dana Bash, you don't like that? Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles, you don't like that? Gavin Newsom, governor of California, you don't like that? Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, anyone else who wants to scream about this, you don't like that? Really simple solution. Lift the sanctuary policies. Lift your direct orders to your law enforcement at the city, county, and state level where you have compelled them to not cooperate with federal immigration law enforcement officers. You got a bad guy in custody, you've arrested somebody, and you find out they're in the country illegally, you do what you're supposed to do. You notify ICE, ICE gets a detainer, they pick them up in the safety of the jail cell, no collateral arrests. They're not in the neighborhood, they're not released to wreak havoc on the rest of the community, and nobody else is going to get swept up. It's that simple. Stop lying to the community about how dangerous it is for them to report a crime to the police. Innocent crime victims, if they're in the country illegally, do not get deported ever. Stop with the lies. Stop with the sanctuary policies. It's that simple, but they won't do it. They won't do it because they're political hacks. Ooh, speaking of political hacks, I left this guy out of the names I just listed. Why not? He's forgettable. He's Alex Padilla. Imagine being a U.S. senator from the state of California, and you are in the shadow of a nothing like Adam Schiff. But that's this guy. He had to get his 15 minutes of fame. You'll remember him. He went and stormed into a press conference of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem without announcing himself, without identifying himself. He starts charging toward the podium, screaming like a lunatic, so he got arrested. 30 seconds later, after they checked his ID, they realized he was Senator Alex Padilla of California. And now here he is with Dana Bash, lying, asking a hypothetical question, which we have an answer to, by the way.
And what if I was outside of Home Depot because I like to do some work around the house, not dressed in a suit? Would I be a target of ICE enforcement under Tom Homan? Probably. And it's just wrong. It's not just due process rights that have become the concern, but racial
No, it's not racial profiling, and no, they do not have the due process rights you claim they have. But I'll answer your stupid hypothetical question. If you were standing outside a Home Depot and you weren't dressed in your suit, would you be a target of ICE agents? No, you would not be the target of an ICE agent unless they had a tip that you were actually a suspected murderer, a child rapist, or a pedophile, or some other kind of criminal that they've been sweeping up in these raids. No, you would not be the target. However, if you were hanging out in Home Depot and the guy next to you was the target, yes, Senator Padilla, in fact, you would be detained. And as soon as we figured out who you were and it was cleared that you were in the country legally and you don't have a criminal record and you're not suspected of any crimes, you'd be let go. Because that's law enforcement. That's how it always works. That's the rules that we all have to live by, even when you're a senator. And then he went on.
Some of the unrest that's happening in and around the ICE agents as well. Officials are looking for a suspect who appeared to fire a gun at a federal agent during a raid. A few days before that, 10 people were arrested after opening fire outside an immigration detention facility in Texas, injuring a police officer. Authorities say it was a planned ambush. Earlier this week, a man with a rifle and tactical gear was shot dead after firing at Texas Border Patrol, at least the facility. Are you worried that heated rhetoric around this and around the policies are actually putting law enforcement agents at risk?
First, let me just denounce any violence against law enforcement is unacceptable. Do I think heated rhetoric is, part of what's causing this response? Sadly, yes. And we've seen this administration escalate and escalate and escalate in all ways and manners, whether it's the tactics with which they're going about immigration enforcement. There's a smarter, more effective way to do this than what they're doing.
Well, they say that it's the Democrats' rhetoric, some calling ICE agents secret police, comparing them to the Gestapo.
Well, I wouldn't use those words, but I do have concern when there are no requirements for ICE agents or other federal agents involved with the immigration enforcement actions to not even identify themselves. I mean, if you're a member of a working class immigrant community and you see unmarked cars roll into your community, people getting out of those cars with no identifiers that they are law enforcement, and literally not just detaining, in your mind, maybe kidnapping. So that's why Senator Booker and I have this bill to require that identification for ICE agents or anybody involved with immigration enforcement. It's for the safety of the officers and agents, as well as safety for the community, and to protect against people exploiting the circumstances, impersonating ICE agents, and getting involved with burglary, theft, kidnapping, sexual assault, and worse.
The president, as you know, says that they wear masks to protect their own identity from people who want to go after law enforcement.
Yeah, it's not just what the president says. It's actually a fact, Dana Bash, but that's typical of a left-wing corporate media personality. They can't actually deliver a fact. It has to be shot through the lens of Donald. Well, Trump says this. Well, he says it because it's the truth. But there's Alex Padilla saying, yeah, the heated rhetoric is putting lives in danger and endangering these ICE agents. That's why Trump should shut his mouth. It's his rhetoric that's the problem. Of course, I wouldn't engage in those kind of disparaging remarks about ICE agents, although they are going into neighborhoods without any identification and kidnapping people. That's what he just said. The despicable crumb of a human being. Listen, you have two paths in this story. You have two paths on this issue. You have two political paths in this country. You can either follow a man like that, Alex Padilla, or you can line up behind Tom Homan. I know what line I'm in. I'm in that very long line behind Tom Homan. Just when you thought the behavior of Democrats in California riling up violence against ICE agents had reached the pinnacle that they couldn't get any worse, well, let me introduce you to this guy.
I'm here at a nursery in Carpinteria where ICE just finished an ICE raid operation. I got here, I got many calls from constituents, from social media. We saw what was happening, and I came here to do my congressional oversight responsibilities. When I got here, there was obviously a crowd of protest, and it was overkill. Over 50 ICE agents that were here, and they were conducting this operation. They were creating fear, anxiety, and intimidation. They were dressed in military garb, clothing, military-grade weapons. They were just creating an untenable, incendiary circumstance where they could have got members of the public and themselves hurt. They were pouring gasoline on the flames of this situation. This is ridiculous. There was a child that was hurt. They deployed in various flash devices and smoke devices. Here's part of the shrapnel that came from one of those devices, and it actually hurt a young child that was in the crowd. This is deplorable. This should not be happening on our soil. Individuals dressed like military personnel on our soil. We don't do that in America. This is overkill. This was ridiculous. This was a bunch of crap. And I'm here to do our oversight. They didn't let me through. I saw other members of the public right through here on bicycles. And certainly they did not let me go through the line, the perimeter line that they created. Eventually they dispersed, and that's why I'm here right now. And it's my understanding they apprehended 10 out of the 12 individuals that were here. I got that from the owner of this nursery, not from the ICE agents. Nobody would speak to me. I only got a card from the government relations person and asked me to, if I wanted information, to call Los Angeles. This is unacceptable. If I'm here as a member of Congress doing my oversight responsibility, I should be given the information and the contact information that I need. And that was not the case today. This is deplorable.
All right. So first of all, we'll go backwards. No, just because you're a member of Congress and you show somebody your card doesn't mean that they have to turn over every bit of information you ask for. That's not part of your job as oversight, and they're not beholden to you just because, don't you know who I am? Secondly, I love that they call it a nursery. We'll get into what they were growing there in a second. The piece of shrapnel from the smoke grenade that was deployed to keep the crowds out wouldn't have happened and wouldn't have been deployed if he hadn't riled up a mob to come after the law enforcement agents who were doing their lawful duty. It was the protesters that became the problem, of course, because cops should be able to do their job and apprehend people that they have a warrant to apprehend without having to deal with a mob coming after them. All right, now, this guy's name is Congressman Salud Carbajal, and he represents Santa Barbara County and a good portions of Southern California, including Carpinteria, where a lot of this happened. Now, here's a video of Representative Carbajal going through this crowd. Oh, listen to all the cheers for him. He goes up to an ICE agent. He tries to push through because he's got a card.
Larry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you're right. I'm talking over this. Let me turn the sound off and I can give my narration. He walks up because he's got his business card and he's showing him a business card. So he thinks he can push through police line here because he's got a business card. Here he is. I'm a congressman. Don't you know who I am? By the way, real fast, I need to jump in here for a second. You know how he said, these are people dressed in military garb. We don't do that in the United States of America. Let me just tell you something. I work in Washington, D.C. I've been to Capitol Hill a lot. When this guy goes to work every single day in Washington, D.C. as a member of the United States Congress, he walks past people in military garb, keeping him safe. This lying, despicable midget of a man. He loves the law enforcement officers and military officers who work in the nation's capital, on Capitol Hill, who are dressed in military garb with weapons when they keep him safe, when they keep the rabble out of the Capitol building, when they keep the rabble, away from him. I don't want to mix with those people unless they're cheering for me as I show myself with they all have the windbreaker too. Is this part of the uniform that they're supposed to wear this weekend? We saw Wasserman Schultz with the same windbreaker down in Florida. He flashes his card to get past the, as he calls the military personnel, which they're not. They're dressed that way, but they would love, I assure you, these cops would love to not have to show up to do their job dressed like that. It's hot as hell. They're only there because of the mob the Democrats are stirring up on a daily basis to engage in violent attacks on these cops. All right, so he pushes through because he's got a business card. He says, no, you can't push through here just because you've got a card. It's ridiculous. And then he's engaging with them. He's identifying who he is. He's talking to the agent. You get everybody's capturing it on their cell phones. And eventually, after talking to them, he gets the business card from one of these agents. How do we know that? Well, because we'll let Immigrations and Customs Enforcement take it from here. ICE put out a statement about that very congressman that you just saw. Representative Salud Carbajal was part of a violent mob of protesters attempting to obstruct federal law enforcement as they executed a criminal search warrant at a marijuana facility. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I thought it was a nursery. They were growing little tulips and little pansies for your mom's little flower box outside of her kitchen window. Remember how he described it as a nursery? I'm here at this nursery. Hey, Congressman Carbajal, they were growing weed there. And I know that it's legal under certain circumstances in California, but you just said that there was a child there. What's a child doing at a pot growing facility? That's not legal. It's not legal by a long shot. But it's funny, the information that he left out of his little selfie video that he put out on Instagram, isn't it? They were growing pot. They are importing exploited third world immigrants, illegal immigrants, to grow and harvest pot so your kids can get stoned. And they're employing juveniles, unaccompanied minors at these places. We'll get into those details in a second. So they issued a criminal search warrant at a marijuana facility. By the way, they had a criminal warrant. That means that a judge issued the search warrant at this facility. So if anybody was breaking the law, it was the congressman trying to obstruct the lawful execution of a warrant. He knows that. And if he doesn't, well, I have a feeling he might find out soon about the lawful execution of a warrant at his own place. He cites peaceful protesters when, in fact, these rioters were launching rocks at officers, injuring at least one ICE employee who was left bloody. According to agents on the ground, the congressman doxed the same ICE employee by sharing his business card with members of the violent mob. This is precisely the rhetoric that has led to orchestrated attempts to murder officers and a 700% increase in officers' assaults. May the congressman's constituency always remember he chooses violence over the rule of law. That's the statement from ICE. Here's Representative Carbajal's response. He says this is a blatant attempt to distort what occurred in Carpinteria. DHS and ICE conducted their raid using a disturbing and disproportionate level of force. Wait, I'm sorry. That's not your job to determine that. I love that that's what he starts with. He's not denying that it was a lawful warrant. He's not denying that they had every legal right to be there. He's just saying there were too many of them. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's me. But when you're doing your job and you're a law enforcement officer and your hope is to go home and return to your wife and kids at the end of the day, and you see the kind of mobs you've had to deal with in California over the last several weeks, I think you're going to see an overwhelming use of force. You don't like that, Congressman Carbajal? Then you call off the dogs. You tell Chirla and all the other Soros-funded organizations to stop paying for mobs to show up. So he starts the whole thing by saying, the problem is that there was a disproportionate level of force. There were too many cops there to execute. We'd prefer there only to be 3 or 4 cops to execute the warrant. That way we can surround them and overwhelm them and drive them out. Who the hell does this guy think he is? Both on the farm workers they were targeting and the peaceful protesters who gathered to defend their neighbors. I witnessed agents in full military gear fire smoke canisters and other projectiles into a crowd of peaceful civilians just before I arrived at the scene. Witnesses told me the agents threw a stun grenade into the crowd. Several civilians were injured, including a child. This aggressive behavior in a normally quiet part of the Central Coast sparked alarm across our community, prompting a flood of calls and messages to my office from concerned citizens. I went to the scene to seek answers and represent my constituents. ICE's claim of doxing and violent mobs are familiar deflection tactics designed to distort public perception and to evade accountability for the aggressive actions in our community. According to ICE, this guy got the card of one of the agents, then shared the card, ICE says, with some of the protesters. And the next thing you know, that agent was doxxed, his identity was revealed, and then he suffered a violent attack. But let's get to the bottom line here. Who are we talking about? Who's ICE going after here? Bill Malugin of Fox News reporting the results of the raid that happened on Friday in Carpinteria, same district, where they went after 2 farms, one in Carpinteria, one in Camarillo. 2 farms that was growing pot. These are farms. They're not growing tomatoes. It's not strawberries. Oh, who will pick our lettuce? It'll rot in the fields. It's pot. It's marijuana. DHS is reporting the number of illegal aliens arrested in the California cannabis farm raids on Thursday is now up to 361. Excuse me, Congressman. Please tell me, how many ICE law enforcement officers are the appropriate complement when you go to a farm and arrest 361 people? Is a 10-to-1 ratio okay? Can they bring 30, 40? When you're arresting 360 people in the country illegally, you're going to need a big group of cops to do it. Among the 361, previously deported Mexican alien convicted of kidnapping, attempted rape, and attempted child molestation. Mexican alien convicted of rape and DUI. Salvadoran alien convicted of DUI, hit and run, property damage. Mexican alien convicted of 3-time burglary and a DUI. This is all coming. This is the statement from Tricia McLaughlin. DHS says 500 plus rioters attempted to interrupt the operation. 4 U.S. citizens have been arrested for assaulting or resisting federal agents. 14 migrant juveniles found in the cannabis farms, including 9 unaccompanied minors. That's who they're protecting. Kidnappers, attempted rape, attempted child molestation, convicted of rape, DUI hit and run, 3-time burglar. And, oh, by the way, 14 juveniles, including 9 unaccompanied. That means there was no adult there that was a relative or in any way responsible for those 9 unaccompanied minors. Before you hear from left-wing advocates who are trying to say that, oh, there's nothing wrong with kids working on a farm, that's legal in the state of California. In fact, I believe we have Abby Phillips saying that, don't we? Well, let's watch the video, and if she does say it, I'll respond to it. Otherwise, I'll throw it out there. But just understand, that's who they'll tell. Oh, it's a nursery. Oh, it's a farm. Oh, they're growing stuff. No, they're importing exploited, cheap, criminal, illegal immigrant labor from third world countries to grow and harvest pot so they can then sell it to your kids so they can get stoned. And the owners of the farm get rich. Oh, and what do they do with the money they make? They donate it to Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, to keep the whole thing going. But there at CNN, Abby Phillips knows who the real problem is.
Documented part, but according to this statement, in this country, not just at farm, and not at marijuana farms, at all
semantics.
Farms.
Look at the reality of what
I'm
we're
just saying,
talking about. How did an unaccompanied, undocumented 14-year-old in the middle of the day?
I believe that, and many people might believe, children should be subject to child labor laws.
Absolutely.
But it's true in this country that when it comes to agricultural work, they're not, and that includes marijuana farms. So the legality of their status is a separate issue, but the fact of children being there is not actually something that is necessarily illegal.
I have a really hard time believing
So there's that. So it's not unusual for there to be teenagers and working in a farm.
A 14-year-old can work at a marijuana growing.
It doesn't matter whether it's a marijuana farm or an apple farm.
A kid can't work at a
Actually, it does. And that's where I'm going to jump in. There's a little bit more on this. I'm familiar with the state of California laws, and it's not just state of California. Many farming states have these laws where juveniles are not subject to child labor laws and they can work on the farms. It's because of family farms. The reason that those laws were put in place, or those provisions were put in place outside of typical child labor laws, is because family farmers, moms and dads who have lived on farms for generations, and who say, I was 12 years old and I helped my dad. I drove the tractor and we harvested at harvest time. And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to raise our children with the same ethic. That's why those carve-outs are there. It's not so people can exploit children unaccompanied from Guatemala who have trekked thousands of miles up to our border because a coyote got $10,000 to get them into the country so that they can then live in slave conditions on some giant agricultural concern. It's for family farms. It's for children who are being raised by their farmer parents. That's what those laws are for. And regardless of them exploiting this loophole to let kids pick fruits and vegetables in California who are here unaccompanied from south of the border and from some third world nation, which is never what that law was intended for. Regardless of that, the law in California specific to a cannabis operation is that no minors are allowed to be there, even if they are the children of the owner of the farm. Minors are excluded. She's wrong here. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Yet she's trying to defend it. Because that's where Democrats and people in the media, but, I repeat myself, that's where they are now. They find themselves in the fabulous position of having to defend the literal indefensible. And that's what you're witnessing right here with this Democrat politician and with the members of the media who just know that they can't be on the side of Trump on this. They have to defend what is, by any objective, reasonable evaluation of the facts on the ground, completely indefensible. But here she is, on behalf of CNN and behalf of her party, saying, oh, no, it's fine. You may not like it, but it's legal for kids to be harvesting pot while in the country illegally and exploited. Do you have any idea what the owners of these farms do to these children who are in the country illegally, who have no recourse? They have nowhere to go, and they're terrified. They're 14. They don't know that they can go to law enforcement. They can be violated in the most horrific ways, and there's no one to turn to. They have no aunts, they have no uncles, they have no parents. And this, and you may not like this circumstance. I hope you don't like it. And if you're angry and your anger is focused at ICE, what the hell is wrong with you? ICE is there to save these children. You don't like kids are being exploited, neither do I. Blame Biden. He's the one who created this situation. All right, I'll let Abby finish up here.
It's agriculture. They're not.
If that's the law, that's outrageous.
They're cultivating it.
Changed.
The point is, this incident, and we're still learning a lot more about it, was very dangerous and put a lot of people, including ICE officers and those immigrants, in danger.
Federal law enforcement agents.
I agree with you, but the tactics are producing chaos and violence, and I think that is one of the things that's caused
that you're talking
people
about.
to.
Who that's the first. That's my question.
We don't know.
Well,
we will find out.
Well, it seems like there's a questionable call because they're making them delete photos and videos on their phones. So
Correct.
I'm guessing there's going to be a more complete story as to what's going on.
We will find out.
Yeah. Jillian Michaels there with the appropriate response. This was a very dangerous situation. It's not dangerous if everybody just follows law enforcement's instructions and you don't stick 500 people on the cops throwing things and creating a riot. Cops arresting people at a farm who are in the country illegally, that's not a dangerous situation. It's only dangerous when the Democrats drum up the resistance and create this theater in the streets or in the farms. Outrageous. But this is where we are. They will continue to defend the indefensible. But the good news is Tom Homan and ICE and President Trump, they will continue to do what you hired them to do, which is enforce the law. And just make sure you understand exactly what's really going on here and the lies you're being told by one side of this political equation exclusively. They are lying to you. Thank you for coming here for the truth. All right, that's it. Boy, did I go on and on and on today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. Thanks for buying my book. I appreciate that. And let's get to your super chats right now, because clearly I'm happy to be back in my home studio. because I just went on and on and on. Psychological projection is, ooh, he's up in his 2-pound note to a 5-pound note. We're much obliged, seeing their failings and flaws in everyone but themselves as psychological self-defense, running USA with less paper trail than a little league team. That's your Biden administration. I know. It's frightening. It's frightening, the lack of accountability for 4 years when that mashed potato brains was our president of the United States. It's shocking, actually, that more chaos did not ensue, although I feel like we're going to learn about much more. Thank you, Psychological Projectionist. Retired Nana with a $5 super chat. At the hearing, an aide said if Biden didn't sign, then that was to be acknowledged in a document. Senator Hawley is going to request that document. Yeah. Oh no, this is going to explode. Retired Nana. I love that pooch too. What a face. Thank you for that. Betsy Merrill. Oh, look at that giant 1999 super chat. Larry is looking extra handsome today. Why, thank you. Why, thank you, Betsy. Thank you. Is it the silver fox thing going on here? The gray beard that's coming in? I saw I in the corner of my eye, I saw people commenting on the beard. And somebody appropriately said that beard makes people look 10 years older. Kevin, do you think I look 10 years older with the beard?
I don't know. That's a good question.
We have the facial hair conversation comes up every summer because I tend to not shave for weeks on end. This is actually, I think this is 5 days worth. And I always say, oh, and then people say, oh, I like the beard, keep the beard, keep the beard. And let me just cut to the chase. I am not keeping the beard. In fact, I should have shaved before the show today. I ran out of time. I will be shaving tonight, this afternoon, maybe tomorrow morning. My wife hates the beard. She hates the beard. I actually like it. If I could keep it at this length and just keep it, I actually like it like this, but she hates it. And it does make me look older. And my wife is younger than me, and I don't want to look that much. I already look older than my wife. I don't want, but Betsy, thank you. You know what, Betsy, I'm going to let Meredith know that Betsy Merrill thinks that I look extra handsome today. And I'll see if that makes a difference. She might shave me herself, Betsy. Richard Murray with the $10 super chat. Debbie Wasserman Schultz should have been with my unit in Iraq 22 years ago when my people were living 22 to 24 in tent with only about 2 feet between their cots, not bunk beds, thank you. And they had to use outhouses and walk half a mile to a shower. Yes, but did you brush your teeth where you pooped, Richard Murray? Oh, Richard, thank you for your service. I know that's the only thing I could think of when she was describing these conditions about how horrible it was. It's like, lady, this is exactly what you expect from our military who keep you safe and in Congress. Thank you, Richard, for that. Casparius with a $5 super chat. Pardon my French. Oh, but would these goofball goobers be in favor of kids being on a tobacco farm or nicotine producing farm? Thank you. Actually, there's nothing French in there. I was expecting French or profanity. Thank you. I meant to make that point, and I will next time this story comes up. There would be congressional hearings. They would shut down the tobacco farm if they found out that kids were there. Great point. My shirt and beard clash. Keep the facial hair. How does a shirt and beard clash? How do you? I didn't realize facial hair and a shirt are supposed to go together. How does this clash? Is this not the shirt that a bearded man would wear? Goatlander? All right, sorry, I just took your super chat off the screen. Lou Gunn with a $4.99 super chat for coffee at Sheets. We need more military and police officers on our streets. That rhymes too. Thank you. $4.99 would actually get us a good, a large coffee at Sheets. Where's the closest Sheets around here, though? In the metropolitan area. Do you have one there in Virginia, Kevin?
I think there's one in the town I grew up in.
I got a. Oh well, yeah. That's right. You grew up in. Is there? I have a Wawa near me in the greater Annapolis area where I am right now.
If you drive out towards Charlottesville out of DC, there are Sheets galore.
Oh, down there, sure. Charlottesville, for crying out loud, but we ain't going down there. I mean, in the greater metro DC area. Like I said, I got a Wawa here. I think there's a Sheets out by Frederick. That's about 40 minutes. Anyway, thank you, Lou Gunn. We'll get the coffee at a Sheets adjacent. Oh, another $4.99 Lou gun. Now I feel like demolishing the door between our toilet and our bathroom sink. You can afford coffee at Starbucks now. LOL. Thank you, Lou Gun. That's very sweet of you. It's right. You're right. All you bougie fancy types with your separation between your toilet and your sink. Is that not the stupidest thing you've ever heard a congressperson say? They got to brush their teeth where they poop. All right. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. And thank you for watching today. Sorry we went long. This is a marathon. Why did I go so long, Kevin?
I don't know. You're a man of many words.
I am. Well, today I am. Imagine how long our segment would have been on the Pam Bondi DOJ FBI story, which we didn't do.
Yeah, when's that coming?
Didn't make the cut. Well, you know what? Let's watch that story play out. I had a few things to say on X, but nothing worthy of a video segment at this point. But let's see how it plays out. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.